Hello, welcome to the lesson on speech ethics. My name is Justin, and my team and I are going to be breaking down the section into 6 parts: the codes of ethics, ethical and legal speech, communicating truthfully, reasoning and fallacious reasoning, plagiarism, and being an ethical listener. In this section, you're going to learn how your speech ethics affect your speeches and your direct communication with other people. Going into the first topic, codes of ethics. There are 4 key topics you will need to know: ethical absolutism, situational ethics, cultural relativity, and audience well-being. Ethical absolutism is the belief that everyone should give the same reasoning and actions in all forms of situations. So if somebody was stealing from a store, you should call the police on them. Situational ethics uses your intuitions and emotions in making judgments on those decisions. So say you saw a homeless person stealing from a store, you are a lot less likely to call the police on them. Cultural relativity is how the culture you are speaking to affects your word choice and your ethics altogether. If you're speaking to older people or younger people, or mostly men or women, your word choice and a lot of other things about your speech will change. And audience well-being is just how your audience feels affected about your speech and how you need to make sure that they're well off and you're not harassing them or hurting their well-being. Ethical absolutism and situational ethics go hand in hand because they're used in everyday situations where you will be talking one-on-one with people or to a group. Say when you're scolding a child, you're going to want to give them the reasons why they're wrong and why they should never do it again, which is ethical absolutism. But then since they're a child, you're not going to be screaming or raising your voice too highly, which is using your situational ethics. Some examples of changes that cultural relativity will give to your speeches are using pronouns like they instead of he or she if you're speaking to a binary group, or using different examples depending on the age group. Something that happened in the 70s will clearly affect people more from that era than something that happened in the 2000s, and vice versa. And then things that you will need to know about audience well-being are going to be changing your words to be less harmful to your listeners. Like if you know a specific quote or something is poorly chosen for a certain race or religion or something, it's a lot better to change that if you're speaking to that religion or race. And if something will affect them more positively, it's a lot better to change to add that in. And that's it for codes of ethics.
Hi, today I'm going to talk about the ethical speech and the legal speech. After I read our textbook, I found out the difference between ethical speech and the legal speech is that they focus on different targets. Ethical speech is more focused on morally right and advance their own moral interests. The legal speech is more focused on make advance to do the decisions and for what we really want. And the content of the legal speech can be not like the morally, but we have to include the lawyers. Inside the lawyers. The detail of the ethical speech, I have 3 points, which is like encouraging the audience, telling the truth, and the conforming to behavior and the ethical standard. For the first one, encouraging audience, which means we need to asking the audience to do the things which is like based on their like moral and morals and values to like of their like environment. For example, like we can asking young people to study the new knowledges and encouraging them to build their own business. And the second one, the telling the truth, which means like telling what's really going on for the audience. The third one is the conforming behavior and ethical standards, which means like we need to like do some adjustments for the content, like which means like change our language and behavior to make the audience feel comfortable about our like speech. For the legal speech, also have like 3 points, which is related to the politic, and the second one is false. Like we can mix some like false information in the speech, and the third one is doesn't consider ethicals and other factors. For the first one, related politics, which means the legal speech always has connection with the government officials, which means the government officials always use the legal speech for their public speaking. And the second one, false information, which means like we can add some like false information in our legal speech and mix the people's like mix for the audience and make them to do the decision which the speakers really want. And the last one is doesn't consider ethicals and other factors, which means we don't need like change the content with content like the ethical speech. Well, we can like include some like bad words in the speech within the bounds of the law. The bad words can be the fighting words, which is about the violence responses, and obscenity, which about like hardcore and sexually, the slander, which is bad for the other people or telling the fake information about other people. So that is ethical speech and legal speech.
So today I'm going to talk about the principal part of the speech ethics, which is communicating truthfully. In another word, it's just like don't lie to audiences. I understand that sometimes people lying because they want to do it for a greater good, or like sometimes it's increase the credibility. And for example, your grandmother likes smoking a lot. I mean, as we all know, smoking could result a bad influence on humans' health condition. And you love her so much, you want to persuade her to quit smoking. So, but is there any grandmother is willing to listen to their cute grandchild who doesn't even have a bachelor degree? Of course not. So here's what you're going to do. Instead of telling grandmother that smoking is bad for her, you tell her some famous cancer doctor who named like Dr. Quit Smoking said smoking is bad for humans' health condition. Since it's a suggestion from a surgeon with the medical doctor degree, there's a bigger possibility that your benevolent grandmother would like to take it. Sounds good, isn't it? But think about this. What if someday somehow your grandmother suddenly realized there's no even such a person named Dr. Quit Smoking? Here's what's gonna happen. Well, next time you're gonna make some point, even it's true to your grandmother, she won't buy it. So do the audiences. When a public speaker is lying, he's taking great risk. Well, now you may ask how about telling a half-truth? Back to your grandmother's case. Instead of make up a fake doctor, you choose a doctor that actually exists in this world. Maybe a real cancer doctor, and you tell your grandmother the very same thing that we discussed 1 minute ago. But the only thing is, this true doctor never said anything with smoking. Technically, it's not 100% lie, right? But half the story is true, but another remaining part is a lie. As long as it's a lie, you're taking great risk.
Your grandmother won't care about who the doctor is. The only thing she would notice is the cute grandchild of her own lied to her. Just imagine the harm you do to her heart. Well, that's all about the lying part, but we're not done yet. There's another thing what we call false inference. What is a false inference? Basically is that someone used some inference to get a wrong result. For example, you told your grandmother that for every deceased man in the United States have drunk water 24 hours before their death. So drinking water results death. So now you no longer want your grandmother to quit smoking, all you want is her to stop drinking water. How abused this inference is. So when a public speaker is making a false inference, it could also be considered as communicating untruthfully. Just don't do it. Just don't do lie, tell your audiences the half truth, and don't make a false inference.
The topic that I have to discuss today is how to properly acknowledge the work of others in order to avoid plagiarism. So what is the meaning of plagiarism? Presenting another person's words or ideas as if it was your own is called plagiarism, and it is always unethical. When you plagiarize, you are misleading your audience and you are misrepresenting the source of the material that you have used. So in other words, you are basically stealing the wisdom of another person. Quoting from a source. When citing sources in your speech, you will need to include some information. Generally, you will want to include the title of the work and date. And to avoid plagiarism, you must attribute the quote to its source this way. As Roberta Gonzalez wrote in the June 19th issue of the Nevada Horizons, page D4, the growth and popularity of drive-in theaters track with the affordability of automobiles for a larger and younger population of drivers. So, paraphrasing the work of others. Paraphrasing the work of others is still considered plagiarism because you are simply rearranging the words and restating it in your minds that you are still taking another person's ideas and representing them as your own. That would still constitute as plagiarism. The safest bet is always to acknowledge the original source of any material you use in your speech. Common knowledge. There are limited situations known as common knowledge in which you can use information from a source without giving direct citation. Common knowledge information is widely known and circulated in many sources. For example, you may not need to cite the fact that France presented the Statue of Liberty to the United States in 1886. Thank you.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Mohammed Tayyar. Today I would like to talk about how reasoning and then Fallacious reasoning doing an important role in our life, and then first let's talk about the reasoning. Reasoning it's happened a lot in our life, such as in some speeches or some arguments, and then the thing we should really care is we should doing some critical thinking and then some logical thinkings, because that can directly generate recenses amounts of people. Now let's talk about the Fallacious reasoning. Fallacious reasonings is happen more when people don't have enough proof of some things. There is a lot of example. I'd like to talk one of example which is happening in my life. When I was a kid, I studied in China. Because of China is a communist country, the education we got is a lot of is just the brainwashing. When I was a kid, my family is a Muslim family. My dad told me what is a God, something about that. But in ours, and then how people created, But in school, my biology teachers and my history teachers, they told us like human, like in the history, like we are not the human, we are the monkey, something like that. And then because of the life situations, and then we change some of our habits. At this time, like I was confused because I know there is some information I got from my family and then some is from my school. At this time, I asked my teacher, okay, if the monkey is our grandparent, why don't we just bring them at home and then take good care of them? At this time, my teacher was really angry because, like Simaya said, like I think the critical thinking and then the logical also can let people get together in some good reasoning, and then also it can make people like, because like when people don't have enough logical and critical thinking, also they go to the wrong way, like the flationing reasoning. Yeah, I think like for both of this, the thing we should to do is like do a good logical thinking and critical thinking. Yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Yellow, and now I'm going to talk the last part of the chapter. Is being an ethical listener. As we all understand, the audience and the presenter must be responsible to hold the smooth presentation. The presenter must present ethically, as well as the audience responsibility is to be ethical behaviors throughout the time. So there's a couple points that have been raised over here: the courtesy, open-minded, and willingness to hold the presenter accountable for his statement. So when we come to courtesy, that means whenever, as soon as the presenter begins his speech, everyone, the audience must stop whatever activity they are doing, because it may distract them or someone around them. So as soon as it starts, you should be focused all your attention toward the presenter. And the second point I want to raise over here is open-mindedness. And this point, we should be avoid prejudging the speaker, even though if you are strongly held beliefs on the topic or you don't like the speaker. So, but consider, what if the point that came out from this presenter might help you change your mind or it abandon your perspective to that topic. So it's better to stay open-minded throughout the time, whatever the presenter presents. And my last point is going to be the willingness to hold the presenter accountable for his statement. Well, as I have said before, it's avoid prejudging the presenter. It's unethical, even though whatever the presenter says or mentions during his presentation, you don't have to be swallow everything as it is. It may hurt you or it may damage you equally. But what I recommend is you can promote a question politely. You may ask the clarification, explanation, or any evidence politely or respectfully, or you can express your response respectfully, or when focusing on your points. And one of the most destructive point is attacking the presenter. Which really distract the presenter, which means if you distract the presenter, we distract all of the presentation. So maybe if you follow these 3 points, it may help you to have a successful presentation, and also it helps the presenter to deliver all points that he brings to that room for every presenter. So at this point, maybe this all point can help you everyone to have a successful presentation and grasp any point that you have from that point. So that's all the point for this chapter. Thank you for listening.